County series on local procurement. This is actually my last week as a BALLE staff member, so after years of leading our webinars, I'm particularly nostalgic to be with you all today. I'm going to be reviewing a bit of housekeeping. I'll provide a few reminders about the webinar series, and then we'll introduce our topic and speakers for today. We have several dozen communities from across North America registered for today's webinar. I see folks are dialing in as I speak, and we're delighted to have you all with us. If you're dialed in by phone, but you've not joined us in the webinar room, you can find a link in your reminder email from Mikal Davila. Because of the number of webinar participants, we have the phone line muted. So if you have a question for the presenters at any time during the webinar, you can type your question in the public chat window. They may answer a question during their presentation, but most likely will hold questions to the end of the webinar when we have time set aside for moderated Q&A. If you have technical difficulties at any point, you can note this in the chat window, and our staff member, Mikal, will send you a private chat to help you get sorted out. The private chat shows up as a new tab to the right of the public chat window in the top right corner of your screen. And once that private chat has been initiated, that chat corner of your screen will flash red. After each webinar, we email everyone registered a link to a full recording of the webinar along with the presentation slides and a copy of the questions from the chat. So you can watch for those materials in an email from Mikal over the next few days. Right now in our Local First series, we're doing a deep dive on local procurement. In the United States, as much as 6% of GDP comes from the spending of just two kinds of anchor institutions, medical institutions like hospitals and higher education institutions. So while consumer-focused local first work is critically important, consumers are only a portion of our economy and only a piece of the potential hundreds of millions of dollars in buying power we can redirect to local enterprises. We see local procurement as a growing area of our shared work. In addition to these webinars, we'll be hosting a workshop on local procurement at our annual conference in June, and we'll be doing ongoing resource development, assessment, and storytelling in this area. You can find out more about our conference at bealocalist.org. We'll start our local food procurement deep dive today with two great organizations working in Virginia and the Mid-Atlantic on the development of local and regional food systems. We'll learn about the nuts and bolts of their complementary approaches to identifying and connecting growers and large buyers to get more local foods into a range of local and regional markets. Over the past few months, we've covered various models for localizing procurement across sectors and with many kinds of institutions, from government purchasing in Phoenix to hospital and university purchasing in Cleveland, Detroit, and beyond. If you've missed any of those webinars, they're actually available for viewing on our website. We're going deep on food procurement in the next few months, not only because it is a common area of work for localists, but it's also an area of local procurement with a bit more history and greater traction than other forms of local purchasing. Today we're going to be talking with two great organizations that I'm very excited to have with us, although we've given them a tall order to not only recap what they're doing in 15 minutes each, but to share an awful lot of information in a short time here. So we're going to learn about the nuts and bolts of their approaches. We're going to start with Alan Moore, Director of Distribution and Business Development of the Local Food Hub, which is an innovative hybrid nonprofit working to develop a sustainable local food distribution model in Charlottesville, Virginia. Alan is also a former leader of the BALLE member network Lowcountry Local First in Charleston, South Carolina, and you can read more about Alan on our website. Our second speaker is Robbins, Appalachian Harvest General Manager at Appalachian Sustainable Development. Appalachian Harvest is also a social enterprise started in 2000 by the nonprofit Appalachian Sustainable Development. Now, Appalachian Sustainable Development, or ASD, was founded by our 2011 BALLE Fellow, Anthony Flacavento, and BALLE actually profiled Appalachian Harvest more deeply a few years ago in our Community Food Enterprise Report, which you can find online at communityfoodenterprise.org. So with that, I am going to try and pull up your presentation here, Alan. There we go. And I'm going to give you the floor and give you a moment here to take control of your slides and take us away.
All righty. Well, thank you very much, Alyssa, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It's exciting to be here, and as Alyssa mentioned, I helped start, along with Jamie Haley and a bunch of other folks in Charleston, Lowcountry Local First, so I'm very familiar with BALLE and excited to participate. As she mentioned, my name is Alan Moore. I'm the Director of Distribution and Business Development for the Local Food Hub. We're based here in Charlottesville, Virginia. Our mission is to strengthen and secure the future of a healthy regional food supply by providing small farmers with concrete services that support their economic vitality and promote the stewardship of the land. A little bit about us. We are a 501c3 organization, so we're a nonprofit, and we were founded in 2009. We really sort of opened our doors in July of 2009, which is a tough time of year to open a produce-centered business. But we arose out of a meeting that took place in Charlottesville, a roundtable discussion of a lot of the institutional buyers in the community who were very interested in sourcing more local food, but lacked a lot of the mechanisms of how to get that food from the farm to their institution. There wasn't insurance, traceability, marketing, and one number to call to kind of make it happen. So out of that conversation, the idea for the Local Food Hub arose, and I ended up moving back to Charlottesville to help start the Food Hub, and we opened our doors, like I said, in 2009. Currently, we have 7 full-time staff, 7 part-time staff, and we have a warehouse office, which I work out of, which is in Ivy, Virginia. We also manage a farm, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and so we have an office there, which is just south of Charlottesville, and we have an administrative office in downtown Charlottesville. And we're working to connect farms and families to food grown close to home. So as I mentioned, we do a number of different things throughout the community. We run a distribution facility where we aggregate and market the food. We do a lot of work to educate and empower our small family farms. All of the growers that we work with are within, most of them are within about a 20 to 30 mile radius of Charlottesville. Some go a little bit further out than that, but everyone is from within Virginia. And we also manage a 75-acre certified organic farm that is also GAP inspected, that is about 20 minutes south of Charlottesville, and of that we have a little over 7 acres under production, and we use that as an educational facility for production and for outreach. And we also do a lot of work within the community to help increase their access and knowledge of local food. So kind of the nuts and bolts I wanted to get into mostly, as I'm sure that's where a lot of the questions result around. What my main role is to govern and sort of run all of our distribution, purchasing, outreach to growers, and sort of that side of things. We run a refrigerated warehouse that is, we have about 3,500 square feet of refrigerated space broken down into 4 different zones, from a 50-degree zone all the way down into a large walk-in freezer. We also do a lot of the distribution ourselves, so we run 2 refrigerated vehicles. One is a 16-foot refrigerated box truck, and the other is a refrigerated van. We currently have partnered with just over 80 producers throughout Virginia, and they're all different sizes, shapes, and scales. The smallest growing probably just a couple of acres under production, and very small of that, or very little of that, is actually designated to us, up to some of the large apple packers in the area who can pack out hundreds of thousands of bushels of apples. As you can see from this kind of the diagram, we do the kind of that aggregation, distribution, and marketing to help coordinate from the farm to the end buyer. And we carry a lot of that risk and do a lot of the communication from sort of farm to table. A breakdown of our buyers, we have over 180 different sales accounts. Obviously not all of them buy every single week, but they're broken down to 5 different school districts, public school districts. We work with just over 50 public schools. We work with a number of different institutional buyers, from the University of Virginia to Bridgewater College to both of the hospitals here in Charlottesville, and also work through a lot of different of the broadline distributors, other aggregators, and a lot of chefs, retailers, buying clubs, and other folks like that. And sort of what we offer is that sales assistance and marketing, that communication, the traceability, and food safety, and kind of the one number to call for both growers who have product and buyers who are looking for product. When we started in 2009, we were very, I guess green would be a good way to put it. We kind of learned on the fly a lot of the different facets of the produce industry. But what we've seen is a significant growth over time, and we're projecting, again, a big jump this year moving into through 2013. And I've seen a good spring so far, even though it's been a bit cool here. So it's been a challenge to grow with some of the demand that we've seen, and there's a lot of different facets of growth that come into kind of needing to keep in mind as you plan to grow out your organization. Also wanted to kind of give you a breakdown of what we distribute. We carry a full line of different items. I kind of take the approach if all I have is potatoes and a customer doesn't need potatoes, and there's really no reason for them to call us. So I do a lot of work to cultivate our product mix to make sure that we have a lot of different items that service a lot of different types of accounts. So apples are obviously our largest sales item. I have them year-round. In the fall and the winter they can come out of climate storage, and then we bring in fresh throughout from harvest really on. And then on down from tomatoes, meat, eggs, and different types of value-added products. Our top 10 products make up, looks like roughly about 60% of our sales, and the other is broken down from a lot of different other types of items that we carry. So logistics and sort of our customer analysis. As I mentioned, we have about 180 sales accounts. They're broken down roughly even split between distributors and buying clubs, so folks like Cisco, U.S. Food Service, larger aggregators in the D.C. area and locally within Virginia. We work with a lot of different institutions, from public and private schools to universities, retirement communities, folks like that. And then we also work with a lot of different chefs, retailers, caterers, buying clubs, etc. Throughout the year and kind of every winter, we do a lot of work to analyze our customer base and see where are the holes in who we're selling to, and then go out and try and recruit folks to sell to, and folks that we analyze. Oh, we need to flesh out our retailer mix, so let's do a lot of work recruiting those. When we opened in 2009, really until last year, we really were focused throughout Central Virginia. We've recently opened routes into Richmond, which is about an hour east of Charlottesville, and the Washington, D.C. kind of greater area, which is about 2 hours north of Charlottesville, as well as the Shenandoah Valley. We do a lot of work to market and support our products. We charge a premium for what we sell and distribute, and we realize that part of the work that we do is really telling the story of the farm. We keep complete traceability back to our growers and make sure that every box that comes out of our warehouse is labeled with the farm name, the county that they're from, and the product that it is, and so we can really work to tell the story of the farmer as much as the fact that we're selling heirloom tomatoes or summer squash. And one thing to think about that I always stress to folks when I talk about this is when you're getting into the logistics of produce distribution, it's very important to kind of analyze your costs and look at your distribution figures and how much does it cost you to run an organization like this one or like yours. And it lets you know kind of where you need to set your order minimums, how and to develop routes, how to set up sort of extra charges, freight charges, et cetera, and sort of overall have a better handle on what you're doing and kind of how to get from point one or point A to point B. With the growth that I mentioned before, we realized very quickly that we needed to do a significant amount of planning with our producers. Managing for the demand is really important, but also in order to kind of build out your markets, you really need to know that you have produce available throughout the year. So starting in 2010, we really sat down and actually modeled a lot of our initial planning efforts on what Robin and what Anthony and what other folks had done through ASD, and sort of built a planning method around some of what they did and some of what worked in our community to really work to plan with our producers to grow for us and to grow for the demand that we saw and that we see. This planning also allows you to kind of extend your seasons so that you can have product early and late where you can hit the best prices, as well as it also reduces some of those periods of glut that you see when everyone's got squash coming in and the squash price then goes through the floor because you've got to move it. It also gives you the opportunity to do a lot of sort of one-off planning with your producers so that you can really try different types of products that maybe you don't traditionally have a market for, but you can plan with one grower to grow a specific crop for you that you can test market and then hope to replicate that over time. We host an annual meeting every year where all of our producers come, and we use that time to kind of revisit the year, start the planning process, or continue the planning process really, and kind of build from there. And if I'm rushing through some of this, feel free to ask questions or get back in touch. I'm trying to get it all in. So what we really found is that the planning and production planning is an evolving process. It goes on throughout the year. We've adjusted ours over time to kind of fit better with the needs of our growers and kind of what we need. We started with a lot of sort of group planning, but really have now evolved that to do a lot of individual planning with growers, which I'm sure most folks will find or do already. It also allows us to continue to refine the products that we carry. And this we really do by the demand that we see from our customers, as well as what's grown in our region and what folks really enjoy growing, and what is supported by our infrastructure. I mean, we found that some products just don't hold very well in what we have here to hold, or don't distribute well, or our folks go direct, or aren't willing to pay a premium for some things. So we're able to sort of weed out products that don't work as well and identify things that do work really well. And I think overall what we found is that communication is really critical to success. We're continuing to refine how we communicate with our growers, both through phone calls as well as emails, sending out sort of orders to folks on a weekly basis, communicating on movement and pricing and how those are looking towards the following week, communicating about any issues that we see with product or quality, and making sure that we are on top of what folks have in the field and where things are in the field so that we can communicate that to our buyers. We're in a lot of ways a specialty provider for our producers because we're very seasonal, so kind of giving them enough lead time to know that broccoli's coming in next week and that we'll be able to supply them for, say, 6 or 8 weeks allows them to kind of fit us into their pipeline of sourcing. We've also found that it's very important to develop clear and consistent guidelines for your producers, so giving them very detailed crop specifications, how squash needs to be packed and picked, that it can't have the blossom end on it, or that sweet potatoes need to be cleaned, or that tomatoes need to be this size and this ripe and packed in this size box. Really setting up receiving and operational guidelines are important, both to have growers come when they say they're going to be here so that you can sell the product outright, but also following various food safety guidelines that are out there and that are coming down the pike, and really working to kind of help train your producers to kind of meet and fit into the distribution model that we're building with them. And then building and developing technical production documents. So we do a lot of work on our farm to grow very specialty crops there, and we can put together production specs of different seed mix, different harvest guidelines, different packing and sanitizing guidelines, and sort of how we've developed a product line there so that we're able to replicate a pretty similar product across several growers who are small. So grower
Alan, you're
recruitment.
doing a beautiful job of summarizing a lot here shortly, and I'm going to give you a 2-minute warning.
Okay, well, I'll be quick then. Basically, farmer recruitment, we've done a lot of work to reach out to growers. It started with a lot of direct mailer, and where we've gone from there is to, as we've gained more experience, we are able to have growers sort of reach out to us. So we've put together a pretty detailed intake process for them. And then obviously growing for a wholesale market is very different than growing for retail or CSAs. So we do a lot of work from our farm base through direct technical assistance, the crop specs that I mentioned, production planning that I mentioned. We also run a starter program on the farm where we grow starts that we give to growers where we can try different varieties as well as offset some of their costs to start. We also do a workshop series on the farm, and then we've also partnered with a refugee group in Charlottesville for farm labor. And we have 4 guys, which you can see in the picture there from Bhutan, who are farmers, and they work on the farm for us as labor. We do a lot of work in the community through food donations. We donate 25% of the product that we grow on the farm to the food bank and a variety of other groups. And then we do a lot of other work as well. And then I'll just jump really quickly to the end. What have we learned so far? First, that diversity and flexibility are key to our success. We have a lot of different types of growers and customers and a targeted diversity of products that enables us to demand a premium for our products and kind of not necessarily fit into the traditional market pricing for a lot of different things. And we do have a lot of work to extend our seasons. Second, that produce and food is a people business, so it takes a lot of time to develop the relationships, and that in order to build them, you really need to do what you say you're going to do, and that you need to pay on time. Third, that it's important to establish metrics really early and be transparent with sort of all the different parties involved. This allows you to kind of measure your success and challenges and to tell those stories to both your funders as well as your buyers. And it also helps you learn what you do well and maybe what you don't, so you can streamline everything. And then lastly, and I'll finish with this, but really analyze and know your market and where you're distributing, know what your community has to offer, so you're not recreating the wheel. The produce industry is expensive and it is very time consuming to learn, so don't be afraid to partner with local businesses who have the experience and the infrastructure to do that and do sort of what you do well. And then build your relationships with both your buyers and your growers based on success rather than on challenges. So I could go on forever, but I will pass the mic back over to Robin, but I appreciate it, and we'll be here to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Alan. So Robin, I am going to pull up your slides now, and I'm turning the floor over to you, so you can now advance.
Okay, thank you so much for having Appalachian Sustainable Development. My name is RobbinsRobin. I'm the General Manager of Appalachian Harvest. Appalachian Sustainable Development is a 501c3 located in Abingdon, Virginia, and our packing house facility is located in Duffield, Virginia. We took on the soundbite of living better locally and feel that if we all work sustainably and all work together, then we can all live better locally in our communities. Our mission is to create, promote, and expand economically viable, environmentally sound, and socially responsible opportunities to help improve the lives and the health of our local communities and ecosystems, and try fitting that on a business card. Doesn't work very well. But it's so broad that, you want to try to encapsulate what you do in so many program areas. But specifically, I'm going to talk about Appalachian Harvest today and what our work does in agriculture. We have Appalachian Harvest. We also have the Appalachian Harvest Farmers Market Association, rooted in Appalachia, training for any farmer or any family that's wanting to learn how to grow their own food. And we do local food system development. Appalachian Harvest, it actually was established packing house back in 2002. And unfortunately, in 2007, we had a fire that wiped us out, but our mission never stopped and it never changed. And what we do at Appalachian Harvest that we used to do with a 4-person or 5-person staff, we're now doing with 2.25. So we create and sustain marketing opportunities for local farmers from the very small local supermarkets to the very large wholesale regional markets. We guide farmers through organic certification and organic management practices. And our ultimate passion is to keep farmers farming. It doesn't matter if it's organic or conventional, and we have developed programs to work with both meat and egg producers. Those of you that have followed Appalachian Harvest through the years probably recall that we were specifically an organic produce organization, and we took a step back, and our learning from that was that, we can't share the importance of sustainability in our practices if we're isolating ourselves. So we've broadened to work with conventional farmers and help them develop a sustainable practice and market and sell their products as well. We maintain a geothermal packing house for aggregation of farm products. This is where we have our grower meetings. We have grower meetings in October all the way through May. And many of these are mandatory because if you want to participate with a group network, you have to behave as a group member. We also do the technical support and food safety training here. You can see we have one tractor trailer parked in one of the bays, and then we also have a 26-foot reefer truck and now a 20-foot box reefer truck. In 2012, almost $900,000 went back into the pockets of local farmers, which was incredible because in 2010 we had $660,000 in sales revenue, and so it was really a good leap for 2 years. We also trained 1,183 regional farmers that attended a variety of sessions on food production practices, food safety, organic certification, and technical support regarding a variety of different crops, niche crops, new crops. And again, it's our passion to keep farmers farming food crops, both organic and conventional, because we want to encapsulate the ag community at large, not just certain sections of it. Appalachian Harvest planning process. We start with, when I started in 2006, I made it a point, I had personal visits to each buyer that Appalachian Harvest had in the past, the wholesale buyers, and then I broadened the stretch, and now we're up to 13 wholesale to retail buyers. So that is key, and I obtained projections from each buyer. Projections meaning how much of this product would you commit to buy from us locally. From that, we developed an overall demand document that tells the number of cases per commodity per week that each buyer would source from us if it was available. Then we transform these buyer demands into required plant populations per commodity per phase necessary, because you want to manage your farmers and manage the production. You don't need 500 cases of peppers this week and none next week. You need to plan that out so you can be consistent in the marketplace. Part of our planning process is we work with the farmers on how to better meet that demand. We divide those populations into phases among the growers, and we've had to have some singing conversations with our growers. We try to match growers' skills to products, to commodity. Mr. Wynn, I've seen what you can do to a cucumber. Do you really want to try an heirloom tomato this year? You have to have those because you want the farmer to be successful as possible. So it might be a better plan for him to do more hard squash rather than to venture to heirloom tomatoes. We provide classroom training, general ag. We work in partnership with Extension on that. We do pesticide training and the license process with Extension, GAP certification in partnership with Extension, organic certification. We train integrated pest management, soil fertility, water quality is huge, and then product quality training, which includes from the farm as to how you handle it, how it has to look once you wash it, the grading specs, guidelines. We have all kinds of documents and handouts on that. And what package does it go in? Does it go in clamshells, boxes, etc.? As you can see in this photo, we're providing on-the-farm training, the technical support. We also do mock inspections because if farmers are going to bill out $650, we want to make sure that they pass them. And we also do mock audits to make sure that they are following the food safety practices and the organic standards that they've committed to. It's huge. We have some very mandatory training on farmers attending the packaging requirements for retail markets. We do this with a slideshow and also hands-on produce. so they can touch, feel, see the difference in a number one and a number two. We train them on our packing house receiving procedures. As you can see there, there's a lot going on. At that point in time, we were actually grading product for the farmers, but we would employ approximately 14 or 15 people that were seasonal. By the time you could get them trained in 2 weeks, they would quit. They didn't like that type of work on your feet for 10 hours a day. But so now we've trained the farmers on how to do this themselves. So training them on our receiving procedures and our processes is very important. They can understand what product goes in what cooler, et cetera, et cetera. We work with them to coordinate the incoming product with the outgoing orders. Typically, buyers like to know within 7 days out to get your best orders and to get your best pricing. So we communicate with farmers during the growing season on a daily basis to get updates on how their crop's looking, when they're going to harvest, and we make them own some of that. If you want me to sell those tomatoes, you better be on the phone with Robin a week before harvest, not the day of. I'll sell them anyway, but you might not get the best price. And we've learned, part of our learning is that you can show them, if we'd have got this projection done last week, you could have got $5 more per case, and it costs 500 cases. That's huge. So we work with them one-on-one to let them know the importance of coordination and working as a team and the meeting the buyer's needs in order to transfer back meeting the grower's needs. Sustainability is about the we, not the me. So it's very important in each step of our processes that we not only encapsulate the need for consumers to have great products, the need for buyers to have great products, and the need for farmers to understand how to produce great products in the needs that the buyers are willing to work with us. How we develop buyer relationships and why we target the markets we do. Well, diversification is key because, as I mentioned earlier, you have to diversify. You're going to have gluts. It's the produce world. We're not the only people in the game. Just because we don't have a glut at our own facility does not mean that there is not a statewide glut, for example, grape tomatoes. By the time our farmers come in with grape tomatoes, the price has fallen out of the market, and you're getting about $10, $7 a flat. But we target the markets that will work with us and work with diverse products. We target buyers that can buy 500 cases at a time to buyers that will buy 3 cases at a time of something. This is not inclusive of our small restaurant buyers that we work with. But this shows the main ones. For example, Whole Foods is primarily an organic, but they do take some conventional products. Lancaster is a huge wholesale outlet up in Jessup, Maryland, that can take 500, 600 case orders. Earth Fare is primarily organic focused. They do take some conventional. Sioux City does both, organic and conventional. The same thing with Ingalls. U-Crop, I keep that on there because I missed them so bad because they were the local before local was being founded out. They worked with farmers in the Richmond area for years and years, but now they are Giant Martin. Appalachian Harvest Farmers Market Association is another avenue that we use to help farmers. We've had to have some very upfront conversations with our growers. If you want to have very small orders and very diverse, you're going to make more money selling them at farmers market or direct market. What we do there is we provide guidance for people wishing to either start a farmers market in their community and work with them closely on how that can happen. We create the dialogue between the farmers and the market managers. We have 14 very successful active farmers markets currently that we help facilitate. And this is also, again, with Appalachian Harvest, every farm counts. If you're a quarter acre, you fit. If you're a 100 acre, you fit. It's all great. We also have the Rooted in Appalachia program that supports our restaurants that want to source local foods and beverages. and we have a Rooted in Appalachian branding that actually is displayed if you want to drive through Bristol, Abingdon, Kingsport, and find a restaurant to eat at that supports the local. They have this branding in their window, as well as sitting on their table that gives them credit for, hey, we support our local economy and our local farmers. Food access, these are some of the things I'm really super passionate about. Healthy Families, Family Farms is a program that works with the food banks and food pantries. We raise money in the off-season and have an account set up for healthy families. The products that do not meet your number one wholesale to retail quality that are still edible, they're still good, we buy those from farmers at 35 cents a pound, and then we donate that to the food bank, so the farmer gets a little bit of something rather than a whole lot of nothing for those seconds. And some of the farmers actually use the farmers market avenue to sell their seconds. We have the Grow Your Own, which is where we teach people how to grow their own food, set up their own gardens. We have two Vista workers that have just been outstanding and have just worked their rears off getting people's gardens tilled, started, planted. And we also have the Earth Box Project, where we teach people how to grow a small amount of food. If you're in a confined space, you can still use a 5-gallon bucket and get some great tomatoes. Or you can use some of these planters and do a tomato, an eggplant, and a pepper in the same smaller space. So this is access to fresh food for people that might not otherwise be able to afford it. So we're really proud of that work in food access. Again, you can see
one or 2 minutes left.
Okay. Over here to the left, we have Marty and Joanne. I refer to them as Superwoman and Supergirl and Wonder Woman. They spearhead the Healthy Families, Family Farms program. There's a quote down below from a grandmother that is so appreciative of these programs because she knows she can have access to healthy food for her grandson, and that means the world, because otherwise, without us, they wouldn't have had that access. So one of the questions that Alyssa had posed is, Appalachian Harvest, have any additional tips for replication? Planning is key, back to the logistics that we spoke about earlier. And one thing that I've learned is to have your PhD, your passion, heated determination to help farmers and be successful, because what we do requires a whole lot of hours, a whole lot of work, a whole lot of analysis. You have to be committed to it. Just because it didn't work this way doesn't mean it's not going to work. Every little peg does not always fit into the square hole or the round hole. You've got to work with that, and you've got to be determined that there's a way to make it work. And we do analysis on we do pre-trip analysis on every truck that goes out and a final analysis on every truck that returns, so we can know where the farmers stand and where we stand, so we can hopefully stay in business and help farmers keep on farming. Thanks for the opportunity, and we'll wait for questions.
All right. Thank you both so much. I know it's hard to summarize all that you do in 30 minutes, and because you're both working in Virginia and Local Food Hub, you've even done some learning from Appalachian Sustainable Development. We asked you to co-present, so really appreciate you guys encapsulating your learning that way. We've had a question come in from Carmen, and I'm going to serve that up in a second, and I welcome everybody else to serve up questions in the chat window. I want to start with a broader question, kind of knowing some of the folks that are on the call with us today. If folks are in a community that may not have regional aggregation and distribution capacity for local foods, like you guys have got, or it may not be as well developed as what you've got, I'd love for you both to reflect on maybe the first step in thinking about how to catalyze this kind of work in their community. And as a part of that, what are some roles that a community business network might play in thinking about how to catalyze local food procurement in their place? So I'm going to start with you, Alan, because you know our community particularly well. So in a community that doesn't have much of this capacity yet, what's the first step as you begin thinking about this?
I mean, I think we started from sort of a roundtable discussion that happened amongst a lot of the sort of stakeholders, I guess, in the community, on sort of institutional buyers who were interested in sourcing more local food, and or growers who are interested in targeting those markets, and sort of identifying, one, is the demand there of folks who want to source food locally, and then if there is, I guess doing some research on what does your community have to help host this. Is there warehouse space available that can be retrofitted to work within? Can you identify at least a core group of growers that can help support the system that's in place, and kind of go from there? Because if you're, it needs to be driven by demand and also supply, but at the same time you can't just force it onto a community that's not embracing it. And the cost to get going from a blank slate is significantly higher than kind of reusing space that's already there. I've had conversations and talked to people who are like, how did you guys ever build your warehouse? Or we're raising this much money to build a warehouse, and it's always so much money to get going that it's daunting to kind of go from 0 to kind of 100 without having a lot of that baseline knowledge, I guess. So really kind of hosting some meetings to make sure that folks in the community are engaged and interested in participating.
Sounds good. Thank you. And Robin, what do you think? What's an important first step or two?
Well, we were fortunate. We had a visionary. Anthony was sitting on the porch with a couple of farmers and said, hey, there's too much agriculture disappearing and there's too many forests disappearing. Let's do something about it. And so those of you that know Anthony know that he doesn't take the answer no very well. So it was at a time when tobacco farmers had lost their price support, so they were looking for something else, and especially in a very rural area. And actually looking at what is here, we actually started in a former tobacco barn and renovated one bay. And as we grew and we were able to get funding, we renovated another bay, and then renovated another bay. And then by the time we had the whole thing renovated, we had the 2007 fire, which a 110-year-old barn wood and $60,000 worth of boxes went up pretty quick. So, we were able to work with funders and community. But you have to actually, as you said, you have to have people there that are willing and wanting and have the desire to maintain agriculture. And then you have to continue to sell it. You have to sell it to funders. You have to sell it to buyers. You have to sell it to farmers. I mean, I had one farmer when we just did organic that said, hey, Robin, I don't want to be running around the field with a fly swatter trying to kill bugs. And so, part of that was training. And it starts, with having that passion, and then grouping your local resources, grouping your regional resources, and then grouping, your larger scale national resources that could help this become successful.
Thank you. We've had some great additional questions come in. I'm going to start with the question from Carmen that says, what percentage of your income is earned versus grants? So I'm actually going to take a step back and ask both of you just to share a little bit more about your budget. You shared, Alan, that you have $800,000 in sales this past year. Robin, you had $900,000 going to local farmers in 2012. Tell us a bit more about your budget, and how much it is of your operating budget is actually coming from earned income versus soft money or grant supplementation. So let's start with you, Alan, because I think the question came in right as you finished presenting.
Well, I mean, our budget is at this point higher than our sales, and in sales of produce, you figure our margin is somewhere between 15 to 25, 30% that we take on sales. So at this point, we're not. The distribution piece isn't profitable, though it's on track to be there. So we are supported through foundation grants, other types of grants, direct donations from the community, et cetera. And because we have a lot of different facets of the organization outside of just the direct distribution piece, there's a lot of work that will sort of always take place that will be sort of within that realm. And then as the distribution piece becomes more, we'll offset some of that cost over time. We'll kind of analyze how the organization is established or set up.
Got it. And is there a rough percentage that you're comfortable sharing in terms of the percentage of your income right now that's earned versus the kind of grant supplementation as you continue to build out the business model?
I mean, our budget is roughly in the neighborhood of, $800,000 to $900,000 a year, maybe slightly over that. And so, if our income is several $100,000 from sales, then sort of the offset would be supported through grants and investment and stuff like that.
Great. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. And Robin, what does your budget look like, and what's the kind of balance between earned income and grants?
Well, the way we work with Appalachian Harvest growers is they buy the boxes and the individual stickers for their products, and for the marketing, refrigeration, training, cooling, distribution area, all of that, we only take 20% from the landed price of the product. So we can't take more from the farmers, so we've had to be creative on how to supplement what we're doing. And it is our goal for Appalachian Harvest to be a functioning business separate as much as possible from grant dependency. I don't have a percentage to put on that, but I can tell you we had a think tank back in December of 2011 where we had funders, we had buyers, we had extension, we had other stakeholders there to figure out how this is going to look. And it actually has to do with how you account it for my time. For example, and of course I don't mean this ugly, this time is a nonprofit time. We're sharing, right, and that's part of our mission. However, my time working on logistics or working with farmers and things like that is actually Appalachian Harvest business time. So how we account what we do has been important to understanding how dependent we're going to be on grants. Last year we actually broke $1 million in sales and functioned on a small percent compared to historic data, because obviously moving more volume, we were getting more of the 20%. Does that make sense? And we also incorporated, there's not a single empty truck on this road that makes sense. I don't care if you're hauling for the competition or if you're doing backhauls or if you're hauling dog food, but we've learned to keep trucks full. So we found backhauls to generate income so we don't have to raise our percentage on our farmers, so we can keep them profitable as possible, but we can't function in the red. So a lot of this learning on the grant end and percentages is a continued learning. For example, if you would see my timesheet that I turn in, it's like so much of this is food safety for a farmer's market grower. So that's really nonprofit because we're not going to gain revenue from this. So much of my time went to 8 hours on Saturday was completely food safety for wholesale to retail markets. So all of that was, expense over to the Appalachian Harvest side. So it's an ongoing learning with that. I can tell you that as of last month, according to our Director of Finance, we were functioning on the least amount of grant money that Appalachian Harvest ever has. So in the off-season, when typically trucks aren't running because we don't have local product, we've got permission from our buyers to do a buy-sell, a regional buy-sell, so we can go into, different areas and purchase product and then resell it and make it carbon-friendly. It's a real map of pretty much Richmond to Georgia to Southwest Virginia to how, well, this truck is partially empty. We can pick up so many pallets here, and we can take those to this buyer, et cetera, and gain a little revenue from that as well. So, again, I can't put a number on it right now because we're really a work in progress on this new type of a planning and accounting that we're doing. But it's, when you're going to start, I don't want to discourage anybody. When you're going to start, you really need to have funders and people embracing this and wanting it to be successful. And you're going to have learnings. And from those learnings, sometimes you're going to lose money. You're not going to do it on purpose. But then that's why it's called a learning.
Right.
But I would,
all right. Well, thank you. We've got maybe 7 more minutes for questions before we do a quick bit of reminders and a good 5 additional questions that have come in. And so I want to keep making our way through those. We've asked a couple big, broad questions to start with. There's some more specific questions. And then I'll just say, Robin and Alan, let's try to do answers in, like 30 seconds or a minute, as best we can to make it through all the questions if we can. So we'll start with one that I think is pretty straightforward, and I believe this is a question for you, Alan, about pop-up markets. What is a pop-up market?
What we've organized is we partnered with the Boys and Girls Club in Charleston, and so we basically sell them produce at a discounted rate and then help them set up farmers markets that they set up at different workplaces around the community, and then they sell so then the kids at the Boys and Girls Club will help them put together a price sheet and have someone from our staff be there for a little bit of the time, and then they sell the produce and they keep the sort of extra money basically that they sell it for retail.
Great. Thank you.
We don't sell anything directly to consumers. We basically just sell all of the product wholesale or to like restaurants, et cetera.
All right, thank you. There's a question here about whether small growers are getting GAP certified, and I believe both of your organizations work with growers on getting GAP certified. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. We don't require our growers to be GAP certified at this point. We do require a clean water test on file. We do a lot of work throughout sort of our annual meeting and sort of on an ongoing basis to offer a lot of educational opportunities to growers on sort of that whole process and kind of helping them walk through it. We do have and we'll see some customers who require the grower through us to be GAP certified. So we can sort of isolate that product and distribute only the product from GAP certified growers into those specific markets. And we're in the process of having our distribution facility be GAP certified.
Okay. Thank you. And Robin, can you just quickly define what GAP certification is and how you work with it?
Well, GAP certification is good agriculture practices, and it's basically a criteria that's established that you follow and you meet. We've worked very closely with Extension. Between Extension and Appalachian Harvest, we've trained over about 500 growers in the past 2 years on GAP certification. It's market-driven. If your market requires GAP certification for you to sell to them, then that is what it is. It's not the government trying to tromp on your property. It is actually market-driven. Your buyers are requiring this. All buyers don't, all of ours but one, but we have isolated like 5 crops that we will sell certified organic that are not GAP, and we've established a non-commingling process, obviously for organic and conventional, and a non-commingling process for GAP and non-GAP. But it's we've actually got training that we do across the state that breaks it down into small pieces so it's digestible, and we have really worked real close with Extension on this. It's not the mountain that people think it is, but it is important if you want to be competitive in a diverse, broad marketplace.
Thank you. We've had a question. You both provide a fair amount of technical assistance, and this goes to, kind of your broader nonprofit mission and then the kind of way you operate your social enterprise business within that. But, you're working to help farmers, to be successful in growing and then ultimately finding market for their products. And so we had a question, do either of you share your training materials for groups that are looking to, start trainings or to augment their trainings in other states? So, Robin, what about you? Do you guys ever share? How does that work?
Yes, we do. And I don't have a secretary working here at Appalachian Harvest. I have a warehouse Monticello, and then a gal that comes in and helps load trucks. So it may take me a while to get it to them, but we have water quality, gap manuals, quality standards, and on-the-farm planning documents that we can definitely share, so they can shoot me an email for that request.
Great. So Nancy, who asked that, we'll give Nancy your email address, and anybody else who would like that, let us know. And what about you guys at Local Food Hub, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of the work both through our workshop series, where we host everything from how to grow more number one tomatoes through your tomato production to food safety issues. So we do a lot of the direct outreach and technical assistance that way. We also have a staff member whose job it is to organize that as well as do a lot of the outreach to both new growers and existing producers to troubleshoot either on the phone or on farm issues they may have. So the actual documents, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem to work with folks to share them.
Great, and then I pulled back up your contact information there. So, and Nancy, we wish you luck in Montana. Two more questions. I'm going to see if we can get through them. There's a great question here from South Carolina about folks who are opening up a consumer food co-op in a low-income area, and they're wondering about how to deal with premium pricing for organic and local from a retailer perspective. So I think that this gets to, again, the desire to get good food into the hands of as many people as possible. And so can you maybe we'll start with you, Alan. Do you have any advice here about how to kind of balance the pricing need for organic and local with the purchasing power of a co-op in a low-income community?
Yeah, well, I mean, anytime a group can make a commitment to buy some volume over time, even if it's a bit here and there, that allows me to work on margins to help reduce the cost. The other opportunities that are out there is there's a lot of produce that doesn't sort of make grade for, say, a number one whatever, but there may be small. And Robin talked a bit about it in her presentation, but there's a lot of opportunity for product out there that can get into the hands of folks who need it but are in low-income communities. And so, sort of finding those opportunities and partnering with growers, you're able to take product that maybe traditionally wouldn't be graded in to a traditional number one box for shipping, but you're able to sort of divert that from other channels and create a revenue source for the grower. And then, like I said, obviously the larger the lot someone's buying, then over time you're able to sort of reduce those costs to the consumer. And then really, having pretty frank conversations with the folks that either they're buying from, the growers, or it looks like in the question it says something about working with distributors, about sort of where they can be and pricing-wise, and what do they need to get there, and then also I think I think everyone on this call will probably say that we probably don't pay enough for food, and not that that's sort of the point, but I think that knowing kind of the real cost of growing the produce rather than comparing it necessarily just to a market-based dollar amount is an important sort of educational piece for communities. But I think, I guess, if you're looking for specifically ways to kind of mitigate some of the higher pricing that you can see, looking outside of sort of the traditional graded number one products and looking for ways to be innovative in how you bring it in to reduce not just the cost of the food, but the cost of getting it there, which is also a pretty big expense, as I know I can speak to, and I know Robin can speak to as well.
Thank you. I'm going to leave it at that, Aaron. It's just starting to scratch the surface and imagining how you can work through that. But I know you can reach out to our panelists to continue digging in further. And Yvette, in terms of whether the farmers work on terms, again, I encourage you to maybe follow up with Alan or Robin.
I can just say quickly for that one, we pay net 15 to all of our growers. So we issue a PO when it comes here, and then we pay with them within 15 days. And that seems to work fine for everybody.
Do you have an equal quickie version, Robin, for that?
Depending on cash flow, we're getting started into the local season. Our first round of checks may be net 21 days. But as the buyers get us back into their system and get patterned back into paying us every 10 or 15, then growers are receiving checks once a week. It just takes a little while to accumulate that cash flow to make that happen.
Got it. So later in the season, it picks up a little bit.
Well, not really later. Within about, the first 3 weeks, we're back on pattern. So it's just,
Great.
right at the beginning, it's just a little rough because of cash flow.
Okay,
and then,
great.
Buyers are on, like I said, we've been kind of out of the loop with several of them, and so now that we're back on track, they're usually paying us within 10 to 15, and as soon as they do, we pay the growers.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both for that. I'm conscious that we are a little bit over time, so I encourage everybody to come back in May where we're going to hear from a buyer's perspective, Emory University, who set a goal of purchasing 75% of their food from within their state of Georgia, and they've made progress to 30% of that goal. So we'll hear from a buyer's perspective what it is they need from producers and kind of what their drivers and process are for working on local food. And then in July, we'll dive into another example on the front lines, Blue Ridge Produce, which is a for-profit model for advancing local food procurement. And we've had Jim, the co-founder of Blue Ridge Produce, with us on the line here as well. So I hope everyone can join us for our continuing conversation here. And a reminder that within the next day or two, you'll get a link to the recording for today, the presentation slides, and a copy of the questions from the public chat window. So watch for that in an email from Mikael Dagila from our staff. You can purchase our webinars individually or buy 3 at a time from across any of our series for 20% savings. And then for any of our members, you can continue the conversation through our Local First Affinity group. So if you're not already participating in that Local First Affinity group, you can email us, martin@vialocalist.org, and we'll get you connected. So Robin and Alan, again, I know it's a tough thing to summarize so much learning in a short format, and I think you both did a lovely job and really, really appreciate your time.
No problem.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right, and thanks everybody else for participating and for your great questions, and wish you all luck in your local work. So thank you, everyone. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you.